Hello, dear student, and welcome to the third installment of my little course, The 12 Days of Christmas in English, where every day I will be teaching you a little bit about British culture and traditions during this festive season. On day one, we were talking a little bit about the literary story behind the expression to be a Scrooge, and yesterday we learned about one of the best Christmas songs of all time, Last Christmas, and the useful phrasal verbs and idiomatic expressions that we can find in it. So what is the topic for today? Well, the topic of today is one of my favorite. It's probably one of the most important topics of the Christmas period, and that is Christmas food. Now, of course, nowadays you can find everything and anything on a British family's dining table during Christmas, from duck à l'orange to, maybe even a Chinese takeaway. However, today we will be discussing the most traditional aspects of Christmas dinner. To do this, I will need a little help from one of the most famous and I would say most eloquent kitchen chefs of all time, Nigella Lawson, who will be giving us some very useful tips on how to perfect the Christmas dinner. So let's get started by looking at the 5 key ingredients and dishes of the typical Christmas dinner menu. Okay, and they are the following. Well, no surprises here, turkey. The next one is roast potatoes, then closely followed with Brussels sprouts, cranberry sauce, and, just to end the meal, Christmas pudding. So let's get started with, the turkey. The turkey is the centerpiece of most Christmas dinners. It is roasted and it is often stuffed with a mixture of onion, herbs, bread, which we call stuffing. However, the start of preparing a turkey is right at the beginning, when we basically use something called brine. So let's see how Nigella Lawson does it. So here's our first clip.
Salt is what turns this into a liquid that will permeate the turkey, bringing all the spice with it and keeping everything moist while it cooks.
So the verb to permeate means to spread through something, either in the air or in a liquid form. So another example could be during the Christmas season, the smell of roasted chestnuts permeates the air, okay? Another expression that we heard in this sentence is keeping everything moist. Well, the last thing you want your turkey to be is dry. So making the turkey moist basically means to make it slightly wet, but wet in a good way, wet in the sense that it has retained its juices. Another example of food that should be moist is, I can actually give you an example sentence with this. This chocolate cake is gorgeous. It's so rich and moist. Basically, the flavors, the taste of the cake, it's not dry. Okay, it's a little bit wet, but in a good way. Side note: a little wet, but in a bad way, is actually called damp. And it is not used to describe food at all. It is usually to describe materials or to describe the quality of air. So an example sentence could be, the clothes are not completely dry yet. The jumpers are still damp. Or, it's not raining, but the air is a little damp. Let's move on to the next key ingredient, which is the gravy. Gravy is a kind of thick brown sauce which is made from the fats and juices of the meats that we will be cooking with. So, for example, lamb, chicken, turkey, of course, and beef dishes.
Lid on, heat on, and this needs to simmer now for about 2 hours, and I suppose I ought to go and get dressed.
So to simmer is essentially to leave something on a lowish fire, not to boiling point, so generally to a point that is hot, but it's not boiling. So instead of boiling, it's kind of just bubbling happily away. However, we can also use the verb to simmer metaphorically to describe a negative situation that has been growing gradually over a period of time. You know, the tension has been increasing almost to the point of boiling. Okay, so a good example could be tensions between two rival groups continued to simmer, eventually boiling over into full-blown conflict. Okay, so in this case, to simmer is to be just below the level of boiling, but also just below a level of complete tension or chaos. And to boil over is essentially to reach that critical moment where things start to explode or to become worse. Right, the next ingredient for our Christmas dinner is the roast potato. So no Christmas is complete without roast potatoes, but there are essential requirements, the main one being that the roast potatoes are not dry. They must be crispy on the outside and fluffy and soft on the inside. So preparation is very important, and Nigella Lawson will tell us how.
Time to parboil the potatoes, which simply means letting them come to a bubble in their salted water and then boil away for 4 minutes before draining them.
So essentially, to parboil, you are only partially cooking the potatoes so that they still remain a little bit firm when they go into the oven to become roasted, you know, that nice crispy external part. The next expression we have is to drain something, to empty something, or to remove liquid from something. But in the idiomatic sense, it could also mean when someone is super tired or lacking in energy. An example sentence, the employee felt drained after a long work day. The work day was really draining, so it can also be an adjective, so ing. Babies can really drain their parents of energy in the first couple of months. Right, next ingredient. Brussels sprouts. Well, Brussels sprouts are a bit of a Christmas dinner joke. Anyway, let's see how Nigella manages to win us over with the Brussels sprouts.
I love sprouts with chestnuts, and I didn't think it was possible to improve on that until I added, to match the sweetness of chestnuts, the saltiness, intense, gorgeous, savoury saltiness of bacon. There is no turning back once you've done that.
So this brings us to the part of how we actually describe food, how we describe the flavours or the textures of food. Now, there are obviously specific adjectives that you can use, but I've noticed a very cool rule in English whereby you can take an ingredient and simply by adding the letter Y to the end of it, this already sort of gives us a clue as to the taste or texture of the food that you are describing. So imagine a soup is very liquid, it's very diluted. We could say, well, it's like water. So water plus Y, watery. Or imagine you have a dish and they've just loaded it with salt. Salt plus Y, salty. Imagine you have a pizza and, you know, it should be nicely distributed ingredients, but it's just covered in cheese. Cheese plus Y, cheesy. And the list goes on. I mean, we even have the word tomatoey, you know. You have a soup, the key ingredient is tomato. Well, tastes pretty tomatoey to me. Yeah, it's very, very possible. I also wanted to include the word tangy. So if something has a bit of a tang, it has a bit of a kick. Often we associate tang with citric food or citrus fruits, for example, oranges, lemons, this kind of acid taste. So tang plus Y, tangy. So I don't know, maybe a lemon cheesecake could be a bit tangy, quite a citrus taste. So I think this is quite a neat little trick if you're desperately trying to search for a word that will describe the dish in front of you. Anyway, let's move on to the last expression from this part. There's no turning back once I've done that. This is an expression when something has changed and you can't imagine going back to your previous routine. You know, it's something extraordinary where you think, oh, I cannot go back to my previous habits. An example sentence: once I had discovered the amazing functions of the air fryer, there was no turning back. I mean, seriously, it is a revolutionary invention. It has certainly revolutionized cooking in my kitchen. Right, the next ingredient we have is cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce is a sweet and tangy accompaniment to the turkey. Okay, so as I said before, tangy is like that sort of citric acidic taste, but in a good way, in a very pleasant way.
Empty the cranberries into the pan. Add a snow of sugar, a splash of water, and a really glorious glug of cherry brandy.
So here, Nigella Lawson has taken a bit of creative license, the way she's described the measurements of a certain food. But yeah, we do actually have some fixed expressions which are not mathematical in any way, but it's just to say, do it with a bit of abandon, a dash of red wine, a dusting of icing sugar, a knob of butter, or a drop of vanilla essence. So there's no key measurement, but it's something that we say just to say, well, take this ingredient and throw it in there. Because yes, I think we often consider cooking to be an art, a passion, but it's the baking that's the science. Anyway, talking about baking, we're getting to the favourite part of the Christmas dinner, the Christmas pudding. So Christmas pudding is essentially like a steamed cake, a steamed pudding that contains dried fruits and spices. And disclaimer, nobody really makes it themselves. I know no one from the UK who has made it. In fact, the only person who I know who has made it is not even British. So yeah, maybe you should feel a bit cheated by that, but no, in reality we buy it and we steam it at home. Even Nigella Lawson has done the same.
I would so much rather buy a Christmas pudding and make my own rum butter. And all you need to do is put the pudding in a steamer or a saucepan, and all that steam coming out is so welcoming, it doesn't matter that you haven't made it yourself.
So steam is the physical vapor that comes off something that is hot, but it is also the process. It's also a verb by which something is cooked by hot vapors. Okay, so to steam the potatoes, for example, if you don't want to boil them, to steam our Christmas pudding, so to keep all the flavours in there. And that is the end of our menu. So these are the ingredients that you will find in practically any traditional Christmas dinner. But as I said at the beginning, times have changed, and sometimes we don't really want this for our Christmas dinner. Sometimes we want something like salmon, or we have a vegetarian menu, or you might even find some people who actually enjoy having a KFC for Christmas. So really, it's up to you how you enjoy this day of the year. Anyway, as with all of our videos, there is a quiz just to see what you have learned. This is part of the Cambridge exam where you have a text with gaps, but compared to the cloze quiz that we saw yesterday, this one is multiple choice. I'm giving you 3 possible options, and you have to choose the one that best fits the gap. So let's have a look at it. So the topic of this one is based on cooking at Christmas time. And it goes a little bit like this. Cooking at Christmas can result in tempers reaching 1 point, but it's also a time to bring family and friends together. Options: steaming, roasting, or boiling. Well, if we've understood the lesson properly, so when things they're not simmering, they've gone beyond simmering, so yes, the perfect choice would be boiling. Okay, so steaming to cook with vapor, roasting to put in the oven, and boiling where something is really reaching a maximum temperature, which we can also associate with tempers and high emotions like anger. Okay, let's continue to the next part. One of the most important parts of the meal is the turkey. To guarantee that the meat stays too, many cooks use a brine, which is a mixture of water, salt, and sometimes sugar. So we have another 3 options: dry, moist, or wet. So again, it's not very common to describe food as wet. We also know that dry is not really the desired result. So moist. Moist is going to be the correct answer. So moist, only slightly wet, but in a good way. This process helps the flavors into the meat. So here are our options: drip, steam, or permeate. Okay, let's see if you know which one is the correct answer. Well, to drip doesn't quite make sense because to drip is usually liquids that are falling down. Steam, we already know this is to cook with vapor. So really permeate. Permeate would be the only verb that we could use to describe this absorption, to absorb into something. Okay, good. So to permeate is the correct answer. Side dishes like roast potatoes, Brussels sprouts, and stuffing are also essential. Brussels sprouts are often a point of 4 as the vegetable everyone loves to hate. So often a point of insult, often a point of contention, or often a point of harmony. Okay, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to insult a vegetable, so insult we can definitely discard. A point of harmony, well, if it were a point of harmony, we wouldn't love to hate it. So yes, the only option here would be a point of contention. But when cooked properly with bacon or chestnuts, they can be 5. Okay, and the options here are bland, delectable, or inedible. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that one. Okay, so bland is an adjective that means when something does not have any taste. You know, it's totally tasteless, it's boring to eat. Delectable is a word which describes something that is delicious, that is a pleasure to the taste buds, we could say. And inedible, well, edible means you can eat it, so inedible is the opposite. You cannot eat it. It is not worthy of your taste buds. So here, yes, based on the context, delectable. Delectable would be the correct word. The Christmas pudding is another highlight. Made with dried fruits, spices, and a 6 of brandy. So our options here: glug, coating, or dash. Well, you might have heard it in the video already, but let's go through it. To glug is when you are actually drinking the alcohol. So, you know, you're glugging down your red wine or your beer. Coating is similar to dusting. You know, you're dusting maybe the top of a Christmas pudding with some icing sugar. And dash is, it refers to a quantity, like a little bit, and we use this often with alcoholic drinks. So, you know, a dash of sherry or a dash of red wine. So in this context, if we're talking about a small amount of alcohol that is being used in a recipe, well, a dash of brandy would be, well, it would make the most sense. Okay, let us continue. It is typically 7 before being served with custard or brandy butter. So our options are fried, flambéed, or steamed. So steamed, it is gently cooked in hot vapors. Okay, it is steamed. Last part. The key to a successful Christmas dinner is careful preparation and a lot of eight in the kitchen. So this is the final part. These are the three possibilities: compromise, effort, or sacrifice. This part is a little bit trickier because grammatically any three of those could fit in the gap. But what is required in the kitchen? Compromise? Well, compromise not really, because compromise is often when you have to give up something, imagine a relationship. A relationship is based on compromise. You can't always do what you want because it requires a balance between your desires and the desires of your partner. What about effort? Well, it requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of work and dedication to get the meal just right. And sacrifice? Well, sacrifice also means effort, but sacrifice also means that you're losing something in the process. So it requires sacrifice. You're losing something that you might actually want. And this is not really the meaning of the sentence. So in the kitchen, we can certainly put the word effort. There's a lot of effort in designing such a superb Christmas dinner. And there you have it. I hope you got it all right. And even if you didn't, listen, it's always a process. So hopefully you've learned a lot more vocabulary, different structures that you might not have known before. Anyway, please stay tuned because tomorrow we will be looking at a new topic. And this one refers, it requires having a certain sense of humor. I will be telling you a couple of jokes. You are not at all required to laugh at them unless you want to be as silly as I am. But we'll look at them tomorrow. And this is a great example of wordplay, how we use different types of words with double meanings to create humor, to make people laugh or sometimes not laugh. But anyway, that is all for today, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Bye!